Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining Barry and me once again for another conversation on relationship mastery. And
Yes.
Barry and I were just saying that we last week we talked about taking care of our aging parents, and part of that conversation was about if there was any unhealed areas of the relationship, or even sometimes we even talked about some relationships they're just it's been so abusive that there is no relationship to be healed. That separation and is really important, and healthy boundaries. And if the person hasn't changed, hasn't shown enough remorse, and personally, if you just don't feel comfortable with a parent that has, been less than adequate as a parent, whether there was emotional abuse, physical, psychological, sexual, whatever the issues are, when they're that severe, protecting yourself and maintaining a distance rather is really important. But we can find closure on another level, and I think that's what Barry and I want to talk about this week.
Yeah.
Is so, at the end of a relationship, whether it's with parents or a loved one or whatever, there's usually one person that wants to end the relationship more than the other. That's this amicably separating is a wonderful idea, and it can be achieved. But I would say there's usually one person that struggles a little more than the other.
Yeah.
And part of the ending of that relationship is finding closure. And that can look like so many different things to so many different people. Some people need answers. Why is this ending? What's wrong with me? Why are you leaving? And sometimes the other partner that is, has left the relationship emotionally earlier than the other one finds it hard to be honest. And they don't want to be put on the spot. So they don't want to have the conversation. And then the other person is left with like no closure, no understanding. The relationship has just ended, and they're left to try and put the pieces together. So
Right.
have you, Barry, so you've got you on the hot spot, have you ever had anybody end a relationship with you that sort of blindsided you, and then sort of basically didn't want to have a conversation about why they left and where the relationship started to falter or fall apart?
Simply put, yes.
I mean,
Yeah. No.
response.
First of all, it wasn't recent, and I've done a lot of work since then, so I don't have any emotional baggage around it, so I can laugh about it myself. But I mean, I may have shared before about the relationship that really sort of changed my trajectory in my life. That was one of those where basically and let me be transparent here. I also probably on some level knew it was coming to that sort of ending, but I wasn't conscious of it. I wasn't thinking about it, and I wasn't planning on it. However, she was, and she was very blatant about it, and basically cut ties with me like pretty much immediately. And we haven't spoken since, and that's been 18 years.
And how long was the relationship?
It was less than a year, but it was intense. We were almost living together. We were deep, we're deep in each other's lives and very enmeshed, and wasn't very pretty. I mean, this is really did a lot of the work that I've done since, which is why I talk about the ways of getting through the stuff, because I've been through that stuff myself.
Yeah.
That was one of those. I've had a couple others, I think, but that was the one that's probably most overtly where it was like in my face, we're done, see ya, and then gone sort of experience. And there wasn't any closure communication. I wasn't at that point thinking that we were done the way she was. So it was definitely uneven. And yeah, as you were saying earlier, it's like, and I think for the majority of cases, most people do have a relationship ending where either they or their partner wants it more than the other person does. And so I do know the experience from personal experience.
Yeah. So just to quickly, so did you ever reach? I know you said it was very cut and dry for her, gone, done, that's it. And a year-long relationship is. I'm thinking about some of my past relationships. They can be very, very intense. It doesn't mean that just because you're together 18 years is a year that those feelings are, and the investment and everything isn't there, and the connection.
Yeah.
But so did you? I'm curious. Did you reach out to her for any closure, and she just the steel wall came up, or
No, actually, I'm smiling about it now, but frankly, it's like she disappeared.
mm,
She basically, I, and also, I mean, after we broke up, I was in shock for a period of time anyway, so I didn't even think about reaching out for a couple of weeks. But she basically, I think if I remember correctly, I mean, she did not. I don't think I. Oh, sorry, let me back up. I was definitely in grief and upset and distressed for a few weeks, and I think I did try to reach out to her, but she never got back to me. And then she basically moved out of town. She moved. She was in town. Then she moved up to Camarillo, met some other guy, and moved in with him, and like started a whole new relationship within a few months. And
mm,
just to be understanding, at the beginning of the relationship with her, she was going through divorce with her husband,
mm,
so she didn't really have much gap in between her relationships. Just from observation, not judging about it, just noticing that.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
when we ended, she was moving on right away, and there was no closure for us, for
mm,
me.
yeah, yeah, and I'm just trying to think as I asked you that question, have I ever been in that situation? And to be honest, not. I mean, I not that I haven't had somebody end a relationship with me, but fortunately, there was closure, there was conversation, there was an understanding. But I want to talk about the importance of this closure. The importance is that a lot of people are left like you, just sort of thinking, now, is this a temporary fight? Is there a cooling off period? Are they going to come back to me? Are they going to rethink the situation? So there's this lingering hope of this might not be completely final. Not saying that that was you, but that can
Right.
happen when
Yes.
there isn't closure. We're just talking about in general now with the when there isn't closure, and the benefits of closure. And I also wanted to say that if you are looking for closure in the conversation you're going to have with the person that has ended the relationship, the best way to really get clear on what was happening for them to make that decision that seemed to blindside you is to make it safe for them, because you're the one that's going to benefit. This is not about you meeting them to sort of wipe the floor with them and say, "How dare you? How I was the best thing you ever had, and how could you just
Right.
walk away from me?" This is about actually bringing peace to the end of a relationship, being able
Yeah.
to let each other go with love and appreciation for what you did have. It's not about punishing the other person or shaming them or making them feel awful for having abandoned you or whatever your issues might be around abandonment. So, firstly, it really is you're the one that's going to benefit. You're the one that's going to have more clarity. You're the one that's going to understand that it's now time to move on. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean move on to somebody else, but it means to move on with your life and to let go
Right.
of any fantasy that you're going to get back together again. But also, and remembering that whatever the other person says, it's not personal, it's their experience. It's you don't have to take it on. Whatever they say to you, if there's a grain of truth to it, you can take it on and go, I didn't see my behavior from that perspective. This is something I might not want to take into a future relationship. Thank you for sharing that with me. That type of, I mean, that's a very civilized conversation when somebody's hurt, but
Yeah.
it can really help you reflect on things you'd like to do differently, is what I'm saying. It's a learning opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean to say that everything that person says to you is the truth and that you are whatever, if they're calling you names and saying awful things about you and whatever. As I say, you take it with, if there is a kernel of truth and it sits with you and there's something here, then that's good information. But if they're using it to hurl abuse at you and blame you, then nope, that's not
Well,
that's
yeah,
not
that's the thing. Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Because the thing is that's the thing about closure at the end of a relationship is you need, you deserve to have completion. That's the whole point about having closure,
mhm,
is that it's not about opening up new wounds or creating new wounds. It's really about having that place of peace. And yes, I mean, like Catherine Wilbur Thomas has the conscious uncoupling, that which is about sort of conscious ending a relationship, which most people frankly don't do.
mhm,
And
mhm,
the thing is, just personal reflection again, that relationship was a gift that I didn't realize at the time was such a gift for me anyway. And I've said this many times over the years. If I ever bumped into her again, I would thank her for the breakup because it gave me the impetus and the clarity to see what I need to do next and what led me down this path to where I do what I do. Frankly, my whole teaching focus work I do is based on off of, I should say, was started because of that breakup.
Mm,
So there's a lot of gifts that came out of it. So I don't have any upset, painful anything after that. But a previous relationship, when we broke up, we actually became friends within a couple of months after we broke up, and we've been dear friends ever since. And you haven't seen each other in ages. When we do, it's like seeing an old friend I haven't seen forever. There's no desire for a relationship, romantic relationship between us, but it's very clean.
mhm,
And those weren't necessarily done consciously, intentionally to have closure. But I'm aware the fact is that if you do the inner work, and this is what I speak to myself from this perspective, because the challenge is you don't always have the partner to do closure with. So doing closure with yourself, I'm very grateful that I've had the skills and the tools over the years to learn how to undo the internal wounding that I've carried around that isn't anything to do with them ultimately, stuff I've inflicted on myself. So I can come to a place of peace and caring so that when I do meet that person again, I'm not carrying around like an armload of daggers to throw at them as soon as I see them, because some people do that.
yeah,
And that's the
no,
for me.
absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I'm listening to it, I'm thinking it's the exact same thing for me. I mean, um, when I went through my last before my I mean, my relationship I've been in now for 15 years, but when I went through my divorce, I sought out Debbie Ford had a course called, Spiritual Divorce, and it was incredibly helpful for me, having me because unfortunately it was a bad breakup and there wasn't good communication, and it wasn't a clean break by any means, put it that way. It was just a very, very, very painful period of my life. But and there was no ability to have a real conversation.
Right.
Um, there was a lot of deception and lies and things like that, and revelations that just kept coming, and it was like, ah. But I ended up taking her course and loving it so much, and it helped me. I mean, I didn't share it with my ex-husband. It wasn't about, the closure together, but it helped me find closure. It helped me be at peace with everything that had gone on. And it was, pretty much taking you through the grieving process, the sort of the acceptance, the acknowledgement of where you were, um, the gifts are the most important part too. I mean, when
Hmm.
we feel that we have gained something from any of our relationships, if you can walk away with going, I'm taking this is a gift to me. Like you
Right.
said,
Yeah.
this was not intentionally, but you gave one of the biggest gifts of your life, which is, what you do for a living now is how helping other people. The same thing with me. It was that the end of my marriage helped me, really see my own codependency, my own attraction to narcissists, and again that I trained with Debbie Ford after that to become a spiritual psychology coach in spiritual divorce. Um, so it was an internal journey. It was a finding closure on my own, which unfortunately some people have to do. But the closure is what's important, whether you're doing it with your ex partner or not. It can be done alone.
It is something that I think, and oftentimes is the only way, because of the fact that we said earlier about that, one person wants to leave, the other person doesn't. It's very hard to have an equal playing field to have a completion agreement and a conversation as well. The biggest piece I actually want to talk about, just to bring that up, is in that separation conversation or that completion conversation, is really having the place or coming from the place where you can actually have ownership of what happened and not spend the time, as you said earlier, about being in blame and attacking the other person. Because completion and closure in a relationship is really about understanding your own part in that relationship, not to make yourself better or worse than the other person, just to know where you stood in that relationship. So when you leave the relationship, you ideally come away with some lessons, some learnings, some successes, and some next steps you can take, which may be what prepares you for your next relationship. But the challenge a lot of people do is come into one relationship with wounding and emotional upset and baggage and heartbreak, then they dump that on the next partner, which is not healthy either. So,
Exactly.
taking the time before that, smart move to do the inner work in between relationships.
Yeah, and another one I think is a really important part of the closure is, as you said, totally taking responsibility for maybe expectations or your sometimes we meet somebody and we immediately build a picture about who they are, and whether they're perfect for us and do they tick all the boxes, all of that thing. And sometimes we don't really see the person. We see the painting we've created of them. And
Yeah.
then when they start sort of falling off the edges, you're like, no, get back in there. I want my perfect picture of you. Now that's our responsibility, that they are trying to show us who they are. And we're like, no, I don't want to see that. Get back in line, get back inside that frame.
Oh
And
yeah, we that distorted reality. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, so it really is. It's so important to just even if you come away with like, oh, the signs are there from the beginning. And it's not about, again, it's not about the indictment of each other. It's about why we're not a good match, why it
Oh
wasn't fit. I
yeah.
mean, that's it. Knowing that that is what we're doing here, is understanding where did I have expectations, or where did I not see what was clearly in front of me. I mean, even it's so surprising to me, Sue, too, when I hear people say, "Oh, it completely blindsided me. I had no idea this was going on," and that indicates to me that, not to say that there are people that are excellent liars and cheats and can really, hoodwink somebody, for sure that can happen. But I think, I'll speak for myself. I'll just speak for myself. They were signs that I definitely did not want to see.
Mm.
I was very,
Yeah.
I was very, I wanted to live in my fantasy. I really did. It was like, oh, stop looking at that, not noticing that, not seeing that, and just creating that picture of the perfect family I wanted to keep. And as I've said before, giving my children what I didn't have growing up was my, like that. I think that was my drive, and so therefore there were a lot of red flags from the very beginning that I
Yeah.
completely dismissed and ignored, because I wanted what I wanted.
Yeah.
Um, Again, at the end, the reason is, I'm just going over some things about what it is, the when we, as Barry was saying just then, it's like when we come away with learning, with appreciation. There's a
Mhm.
gift. There's always a gift from every experience we ever had.
Yeah.
These things, they and also and it helps when you can appreciate. There's less regret when you
Yeah.
see that you gain something. There's less opportunity to wish you'd never spent that time together, because
Mhm.
it's been painful. But we always get what we need, not what we want. And
Oh yes.
they have been a huge gift in that was painful, but it was part of your learning, part of your evolution as a spiritual being. And um, so yeah, the things that can hold you back, that you can go into another relationship with, is regret, anger, resentment, wanting revenge. All those things, they're going to spill out in your current relationship unless you clean it up in the one you've just been through.
Absolutely. That speaking to the lesson piece, I mean, I said about the breakup, she wrote me the riot act. Well, what she did was she told me what I wasn't doing, quote, right. And the reality was she was correct. Those things that I had messed up on in the relationship. And I look back and go, yeah, absolutely. I was um not negligent so much as just wasn't taking care of my role in the relationship the way that she had wanted, which frankly was the way I wanted to do it, but I didn't do it. So as much as it was painful to go through because she didn't exactly give it to me politely or in a nice little package, it was like in my face. The gift inside of that blast was very helpful, and actually, as again, it's such a gift that I've used ever since as a reminder to stay true to myself. And it was one of those things where I don't think she knew the power or the impact what she was saying was going to be, but the value I got out of it was so much more than that. And there, and even back then, frankly, sort of after the relationship, there wasn't much in me that was feeling like um, reactive or having to do something about what she did, because I was really, in a sense, overwhelmed by what she. And it sounds crazy to say it this way, but even at that time, I sort of sensed there was a gift in it. That what she told me was what I, as much as I didn't want to, needed to hear. Like saying, what you needed was what you wanted. I know absolutely that's what I got, and it was probably the best gift I could have gotten in that relationship ultimately. And there definitely was, and again, transparency. I know very clearly there was never any future for that relationship. So for me, it was a period of time in my life where it was working, but now change, it would never work again that way. So there's a lot of lessons I've learned since, and having that perspective now. I didn't have, like you did though, the marriage and the family to really have the extra, because that's a lot of stuff to carry as well. So definitely a different experience for me. So I'm not saying mine was any better or worse, just different because of the context it was in. So with what you had, there was a lot more pieces of the puzzle to deal with in that case. So I understand how much more of a, I won't say challenge, but more to take care of or to be aware of before you could do anything to separate.
And you know, you're saying that, but I also know people that are married and they don't think anything of it. It's like that over. There's no romance left. I'm gone. And
Okay.
so it really can be, you know, it just happened to be my issue was that sort of wanting to wanting to give my children what I had not had and wanting and yeah, without a doubt, I got to experience something I hadn't had as a child for myself too, not just for my children. But
Right.
but I've also been in relationships before my marriage and children that were one relationship I can think of that I usually was the one that ran. I have to say, I was a little skittish. I don't remember too many people ending a relationship with me, but there was one person right before I got married, and it was a very short relationship. But on my side, it was very intense. I absolutely, and I think I've spoken about it here before, and it's about you know, you being. I was a little older, and I was professionally stable, and he was a artist, writer, you know, things like that. But and he just felt there was an imbalance in how we could live together financially. There was a financial imbalance. Um, but that relationship, that was probably one of the most painful breakups I'd had. Maybe because he was the one that broke up with me, so I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't, you know, it was painful on a very different level with my husband. It was much more complicated, as you said. But that relationship prior to getting married, um, I took it so personally. I was so unaware back in those days. I felt like if you were ending it with me, it was you were basically saying to me, I've got to know you and you weren't enough. It never even crossed my mind that
Yep.
anyone could be like, we're not a good fit. And it just I just took it like I wasn't good enough. And you know, and he was such a lovely person and he didn't want to hurt me. And so we did have one of those messy endings where you keep getting back together because there is still a lot of love and passion and everything like that there. But I think ultimately he knew it just wasn't, it was too imbalanced. It was just too imbalanced. But I was going to say, what was I miss my miss my train of thought here. But you know, going back again to the people, I just wanted to mention this because it was very important to me. There are some people that you cannot have a conversation with in the physical realm. Either
Yeah.
they choose not to, it's too volatile, or whatever it is. And I firmly believe that we all spiritual beings having a human experience, and that
Hmm.
we can still sort of people go, what the hell is she talking about now? But I do believe that we can sort of we can connect on a spiritual consciousness level. And even as if human beings, there's conflict, there's anger, there's issues, there's been cheating and whatever it is that makes it such a hard, difficult, challenging ending. I think if we can just float above that,
Hmm.
speak to our partner as a spiritual being, not as the human being, but speak to them on that level of thank you for, you know, being one of my teachers that I needed to meet in this lifetime. Thank you for the lessons I learned from the relationship. I know on a spiritual level there is no hate, there's nothing but love and acceptance and gratitude. So even though we're acting really badly on this physical plane and we're really hurt and we're lashing out at each other, that on a spiritual level you can meet and you can have the most beautiful um, relation. I mean, a beautiful conversation with with gratitude and love. And I used to do that a lot with my ex because I knew that there was certain things that probably couldn't be said or heard on this plane. And I gave up trying to find it. It was like trying to get blood out of a stone. So I would just sort of float up and have this lovely conversation. And sometimes it would occur in my dreams. I'd wake up and I'd go, oh, that was a really great dream. And we were very loving with each other on a
Hmm.
spiritual level. And that helped me a lot too. It really helped me rise above the human emotion that can get so muddy and dark at times and take us down. Have you ever had that experience?
Not directly, but what I have, and speaking to one ways of getting there, because that's a great place to be, is so a couple of tips for people who are actually going through this or need to figure out how to get through the closure in the relationship is how to get to center so they can have those conversations. And one of the things I've used a lot with my clients and some I do myself is basically just to write it out, to write. So if you feel like you want something you want to say to the person, but you don't want to say it to their face because you know better, even though the
Mm,
temptation is pretty strong, is write it out. Like put it on paper, not in a journal, but just some paper you can write on, because that gets it out of your consciousness and out of your field, so you're not carrying it around with you all the time. And yeah, if
mm,
it's really bad, if you want to burn it up, would you do that as well? But what you're doing is you're freeing up space for ideally more compassionate words or caring thoughts to come through. So then when you do speak to your partner, whether it is directly or is through the ethereal, you have a shift of perspective. You're not carrying all that vitriol and upset and hurt and wounded feelings with you. Because
mm,
frankly, that's inside of you and it's nothing to do with them ultimately. Not saying that they meant not responsible, but but throwing it back at them doesn't make a difference. So to do what you can to release the pressure yourself, like taking the pressure from a pressure cooker, so you can actually let the steam out, makes it easier to communicate with them if and when you do from a much more centered and a neutral place. So
mm.
it's that thing. So to answer your question that way, I've had the cleanup stuff done myself, and we've got to a place of centeredness, but I've not done it on a level beyond just in person or over the phone sort of thing. So
Yeah.
that's more for me.
No, I'm thinking of two times well, three times actually, and they're not all love relationships. One was certainly with my ex-husband. Um, I I'd written this. I was actually up in Salt Spring Island with some of my three principals teachers at the time, and it was Father's Day, and I wanted to write. I wrote this what I thought was a beautiful message, saying, I know we've been through our troubles, but or whatever, but I so appreciate you being, a present father in our children's lives and blah blah. Anyway, I'm on Salt Spring Island and I'm trying to send it, and it just won't go. It won't send. And I
Mhm.
said to my teacher, I said, what is this? And she really helped me see that, on an energetic level, on a spiritual level, the message had been sent. And
Mhm.
just because T-Mobile didn't want me to send a message from Canada, that really wasn't important. It
Right.
was the feelings and the intention had been sent energetically, and I found that very peaceful, and it made me realize how much power we do to have to send these messages. The other one was one of my sisters, who it was just a terrible misunderstanding when she lost her daughter, and we didn't speak for a few years. But I would again have these conversations with her in my dreams, or in my, when I would meditate, I'd meet her and we'd hug and kiss and love each other, and so that was very satisfying for those years where we didn't communicate.
Mhm.
And then the third one was my father. My mother used to say to me all the time, well, what if he dies and you didn't see him again? And I was like, Mum, when he dies, he's going to get such clarity on the whole picture. You know, there's nothing I can say in this lifetime that will give him the clarity he's going to get when he's up there looking down, going, "Oh wow, yeah, maybe I could have done something differently." But I think sometimes I'm bringing these up because sometimes our closure and our communication doesn't come in the physical form. It comes in the spiritual form. And,
Right.
and that is, in my book, actually more important than having a physical closure. Because as we said in the beginning of the show, sometimes it's hard for people to face somebody they've hurt, and they want
Yeah.
to run away from it. They're not running away from you, they're running away from the fear of hurting somebody. And
Yeah.
sometimes you're not going to get that opportunity to hear from them, from their perspective, what made them choose to end the relationship.
Yeah. Because the bottom line is very simple: is that the closure really is for yourself. That
Mm,
really the focus is meant to be is that you have closure so you can move forward. And whether it's with the other person in person or not, it's always going to be with you anyway. So just focus on your own completion and closure so you can move forward.
yeah, absolutely. And we
Yeah.
are living proof.
Indeed, we are.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us again. I love you, Barry. Thank you for fabulous chats each week. I look forward to it.
Thank you, Del. I do too. We'll have more to come, of course.
Thank you. All right. Take care. Bye bye, everybody.
See ya. Bye. We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.